There are more than just two ways to do it.
Well, maybe two parties is enough in most years, but these two parties are not enough this year. Look what people think. I mean, they're locked in a duopoly. Neither party wants to surrender the power that that duopoly represents. It's kind of like a death spiral embrace. They seem to be more interested in trying to outslander each other than they do in advancing the ball and doing the people's business. So this year, are two parties enough? Not these two, not this year.
Now, the political climate could be right for a third-party candidate right now. Just 34% of Americans view Clinton positively in our latest poll. The number even worse for Trump, only 27%. But your campaign right now really is all about hitting 15% by early September. That's how you get in that debate.
Well, interestingly, and you probably saw it, CNN poll a couple of days ago had myself and Bill Weld at 13%. So
it looks to me like you're drawing about evenly from both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump when you break it down. People understand, I think, how a libertarian would appeal to Republicans on economic issues. What's your pitch to Democrats?
Well, that choice, personal liberty, personal freedom, it's fundamental to be an American. So marriage equality, a woman's right to choose, legalizing marijuana, crony capitalism is alive and well. Governments can play a really big role in creating equal opportunity, which I think is something that we all really do cherish. Income equality, that's a whole nother topic. That's taking from somebody to give to somebody else. Equal opportunity. Look, if we all recognize that we have an equal shot at everything that this country has to offer, then we're in good shape. It is something that government can do.
Who is that person you're trying to appeal to?
Well, when 50% of Americans now, when they're registering to vote, are declaring themselves as independent, I think I'm trying to appeal to the majority of Americans whom I think are libertarian. It's just that they don't know it. And libertarian with a broad brushstroke, fiscally conservative, socially accepting liberal. And I'd like to say, you know, there are good things on both sides, but when it comes to Hillary, I think at the end of the day, she is going to grow government. I think that taxes are going to go up. I think militarily things aren't going to change at all in the world. When it comes to Donald Trump, deporting 11 million illegal immigrants, that is really wrong-headed, building a fence across the border. His declaration that Mexicans are murderers and rapists when in fact they're law-abiding citizens, more law-abiding than U.S. citizens. They're not taking jobs that U.S. citizens want. When he says he's going to kill the families of Muslim terrorists. When he says he's going to bring back waterboarding, or worse, when he says he's for free market, but then in the next sentence he says he's going to force Apple to make their iPhones and their iPads in the United States, when he says he's going to apply a 35% tariff on imported goods, who's going to pay for that? Well, on and on and on.
Well, for me, taking the I side with quiz, amazingly, the next politician that I align with outside of the libertarians that are running for president is Bernie Sanders. I align with Bernie Sanders 73% of what he says. Now, when it comes to economics, we come to a T in the road. When it comes to socialism versus, being an entrepreneur, when it comes to big government versus small government, we come to that T in the road. But on the issues of legalizing marijuana, same-sex marriage, a woman's right to choose, hey, let's stop with these military interventions. This is just crazy.
But look at the map. Look at how much that Republican governor won that state that year. The Republican governor who got reelected that year in that state by such a massive margin, by the biggest margin ever in the history of that state, was a guy named Bill Weld. Bill Weld was a socially liberal, fiscally conservative Republican. We don't have those anymore, but we used to. And Bill Weld used to be the paragon example of that political beast. Bill Weld was elected governor in Massachusetts in 1990, as the first time that state had elected a Republican governor in 20 years. But he was so popular, his time in office was seen as such a success that his re-election margin in 1994 broke every record in the state. On fiscal issues, he was conservative and successful. The Libertarian Cato Institute praised him during his time in office as the greatest governor in the nation. On social issues, he was liberal. He made the conservatives in his own party throw fits at the Republican conventions in 1992 and 1996 when he gave a big pro-choice speech, when he insisted on being pro-gay rights, when he argued aggressively that the party ought to scrap its anti-abortion language in the Republican Party platform. There used to be Republicans like that. Bill Weld was among the last of them. They don't make them like that anymore. But that's how you...
He doesn't look like a dream to me.
No, not a dream.
Two ex-Republican governors.
Well, you know, we're a certain type of governor. We were rated the two most fiscally conservative governors in the United States. We overlapped. My second term was his first term. So we've known each other for 20 years, and we see it the same way. And we don't buy the dog food that either party is selling. We don't buy the government making decisions for people in their private lives, part of the Republican Party platform, and we don't buy the Democrats' penchant for spending money that we don't have.
What for you was the most difficult thing, the difficult fit for you in libertarianism, moving from the Republican Party to the Libertarian Party?
None of it. I mean, I feel free at last. I don't have to wear the pack on my back of the anti-choice, we're uneasy about gays and lesbians, let us, the government, make decisions for you in your personal life. I've always hated that, and I had to wear it as a Republican very uneasily. And, you know, I don't have to embrace democratic overspending and not really caring about $20 trillion in debt, which is going to hollow out our economy. I don't have to embrace that. So Gary and I are right in the middle. We're right where we want to be. We don't agree with half of the platform of either major party. So that puts us right in the center. And if you want to call the center a fringe, make the most of it.
But as a governor of Massachusetts, Republican governor of Massachusetts, you appeared to be concerned with environmental damage and in favor of certain kinds of environmental regulation.
Right.
You also seem to favor a social safety net that would support people at the lower end of the poverty population. That seems to me to contradict libertarianism.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I care a lot about the working poor, the poor stiff who has a wife and 2 kids. He's making $28,000 a year. He can't do it. I think what the governor of Massachusetts just did, which I did in my first year in office, to expand the earned income tax credit, I think that's a good thing. You got to think about people who are trying hard to make it in this country and not quite being able to do so.
But I have always viewed the legalization of marijuana as making the world a better place. On the medical side, marijuana products directly compete with legal prescription drugs, painkillers, antidepressants, that statistically kill 100,000 people a year. Not one documented death from marijuana, and like I say, directly competing with those legal prescription drugs. On the recreational side, I have always maintained that legalizing marijuana will lead to less overall substance abuse because people are going to find it as such a safer alternative than everything else that's out there, starting with alcohol.
Everybody is talking about the tax revenue, which is correct. It's significant. But more significant than the tax revenue is the savings in law enforcement, the courts, and the prisons. We have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world, and the reason behind that is the war on drugs. We've got tens of millions of convicted felons in this country that, but for our drug laws, would otherwise be tax-paying, law-abiding citizens.
Yeah.
End the drug war.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. It's a huge factor in distrust in law enforcement. It's a huge factor in frustration with the system, feeling disenfranchised with the very system that's supposed to be governing us. You just feel like it's your enemy.
Black Lives Matter. At the heart of that is the drug war.
Yes.
At the heart of that, at the heart of the militarization of our police forces is breaking down doors in the name of confiscating drugs. Healthcare is as far removed from free market right now as it possibly can be. In a free market system for healthcare, we would not have health insurance to cover ourselves for ongoing medical need. We would have health insurance to cover ourselves for catastrophic injury and illness, and we would pay as you go in a system that would probably cost about 1/5 of what it currently costs. Look, we go into the hospital right now. There's no advertised pricing. You have no idea what you're going to pay. There is no statistics on the wall that say, hey, if you're here for gallbladder surgery, you can expect a 99% outcome. There's none of that.
Say, Chuck, that when the GIs came back from World War II, they had two sets of needs, education and health care. And on education, they did probably the most successful program in domestic political history, the GI Bill, which was essentially a voucher program. On health care, they went the other way. Command and control, one size fits all, government operated, that's the only place you have to go. If that had been a voucher program like the education solution, things might be very different now. And it's structural. It's not President Obama's fault. It's no one president's fault. But I don't think everyone realizes that the desire of the people working at the VA hospitals is the top in the entire country. But very few people would pretend the level of care and the speed of care is the same as in the private sector.
We were in Saudi Arabia or we weren't in Saudi Arabia, they were going to still attack us.
And there's and look, if we're attacked, we're going to attack back, and you can make the argument that we have been attacked by ISIS. This is something that we should engage in.
Staying on this theme, there's been this interesting debate in both the Republican and Democratic primaries about whether the U.S. is better off trying to push for dictators like Assad in the Middle East to be pushed out of power, or whether we're actually better off with them there because in some ways they actually tamp down. Where do you fall on this?
Where I fall on this is the unintended consequences of our interventions, and that the unintended consequences have made things worse, not better.
And the word that I wanted to reject firmly is isolationism. That's a very bad word in my lexicon, and I do believe in constructive engagement all around the world. I agree with the Libertarian Party and Gary about non-interventionism. I do think that in retrospect the invasion of Iraq has destabilized and made worse the Sunni-Shia conflict, which I spent a fair amount of time in the Middle East. ISIS is beheading a bunch of Americans to teach us a lesson. They got to be not long for this world. I'm just sorry. I'm not sure exactly how you get there, but they've got to be not long for this world, and it doesn't really matter where they are. That's an act of war against the United States. The question in one sentence, I think the paramount duty of the next administration is to bring the country together. I think people's teeth are set on edge against each other as groups. A lot of the reason is Republican versus Democrat, gridlock in Washington, hyper gerrymandering, and I think the next president has to rise above that, as did President Eisenhower, President Reagan, make us all feel good about being Americans.
And I hope...
Please.
I hope it's obvious. Look, we're proposing to do this as a team. We're not going to have separate staffs. That divides the two of us, and it's two for the price of one.
Well, it's two for the price of two, but even that is a bargain in today's politics.
I served as governor of New Mexico for 2 terms as a Republican in a state that's 2-to-1 Democrat. I got reelected by a bigger margin the second time than the first time. Made a name for myself as a real government skeptic, vetoing legislation. I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. Coupled with that, I'm socially tolerant, socially liberal. Look, you and I should be able to make decisions in our own lives that only affect our own lives as long as those decisions don't adversely affect others. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I know what it is to hire and fire. I know what it is to share in the profits, and what a magic formula that is, that when you share in the profits, amazingly, the profit pie grows significantly. I've been an athlete my entire life, a bit of an oxymoron as a 63-year-old, but what athletics has taught me is, you know, life is putting one foot in front of the other. Athletics has taught me that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. It's how you deal with failure that ultimately determines your success. And continue to move forward and just do your best. I've told the truth. I think it's really hard to do any damage to somebody who's willing to tell the truth regardless of the consequences. And then I admit mistakes. I think mistakes have a way of so compounding themselves just because people don't acknowledge those mistakes. So given...
Appreciate you coming on, sir. I really do. It was very enjoyable talking to you. And I hope you win, man. I really do.